Good morning, Matthew. How's the weather in Canada?
Oh, it's a scorcher.
It's a scorcher. What's the temperature over there?
Well, it's not as hot as it was last year in Holland when we were visiting you, but it's climbing up there, and there's definitely a lot of room for taking some lake dips this week. I can see. So
Oh,
yeah,
really?
oh yeah, it's nice and hot, but the lakes aren't cold enough. That's the challenge.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and you guys entering into your summer heat wave yet?
No, we did have a heat wave for a while. Then we've had some very good rain, which has been very good for us. But it's changed into that. When you find that you can't control the weather, and it's either one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah, no.
You know,
Yeah,
and
my grandfather was a university professor in Cambridge in England, and he tried that one year to much to his dismay. So
yeah,
this is a story I heard second hand though. So
yeah.
I can't verify that.
No,
But
amazing.
that does tie nicely into the topic in a way, because we were having a conversation today about synergy, weren't we?
We were, and isn't that about not being fearful for stuff that's out of your control?
Oh yeah, that's an element of it for sure. For sure, it's knowing that everything that's unfolding before us, there's all these different groups we're part of, all these things in the world. If we just if we could learn to trust in the flow of things become self-organizing, especially things within in the world of world of anything really. But so I think of synergy in terms of that. It's like I think of White Eagle as a group like that, because it's like it's meeting the needs of a particular community, and everyone's coming forward and sharing in their own particular way. And it actually relates to one of the gene keys, which is the 45th gene key. The shadow of that 45th gene key is dominance. So, in dominance, it's like one person exacts authority upon everybody else. They dominate, right? And it's like, whereas in synergy, we're looking at people working together, complementing one another. And there might still be a leader, but there's a connection between the two, or between everybody, where everybody is kind of yielded to the role of others within the group. So although there might be one leader, that leader isn't in it for doing their personal gains. They're in it for um, the benefit of everybody else. And I've had to shift from that model myself in my life, where I used to be a teacher, and it was kind of a role of in the unconscious dominance that was playing out to me, to taking on the role of more facilitator. And in the role of the facilitator is there's much more of that surrender to that. And yeah, and that's a part of it. And then there's also I also kind of think of it in terms of working with our spirit team and the synergy with our spirit team. Find that a fascinating sort of connection. And yeah, but there's lots that can be discussed in that realm today. Oh, great to hear Matthew again.
So it's pretty amazing, Matthew, what you were saying there, right? I had some technical difficulties, but it's like actually surrendering to like a higher power or something that's bigger than you, or the fear of holding it back. And it's like we're all in that, like, trying to move in a way and working separately, but not working collectively.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah. That's it. It's like it takes a lot of trust to come together as a unified group of people. And like I was sharing last week, the story of like the termites that just do like they each like seem like they're
Yeah,
doing their own thing, but
yeah,
they're coming together for a greater goal. So like each individual termite's just like, hey, I'm doing my thing, I'm moving forward, da, da, da. And there's this cohesiveness that they still meet up in the middle. And, you know, humanity, because we have these ego things in our head, we can kind of feel disconnected from that harmony.
Yeah.
You know, it's like each week I have a Gene Keys meetup group, and my role in that is as a facilitator. You know, it's like we look at it as anybody who's in facilitating the Gene Keys is a student like everybody else in the team.
Yeah.
And it's like one of the things that I've noticed is that within myself, having to really trust in the divine orchestration of things, because like just this last Monday, I'd kind of planned what we were going to be doing and facilitating in class. And 90% of the students had to cancel for one reason or another. And
Yeah.
at first I was like, oh, I've done all this prep work and blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, actually, maybe there's some divine providence in when this is actually going to work out. This is like, we can still do all the same activities I planned. We'll just do it next week. And maybe doing them next week, there's going to be a better timing
Yeah.
for people than what had previously been the case, right?
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting, right? It's like when I can surrender to that and just allow it to be. Because, and I was talking with somebody else that had the same thing. They were trying to set up an appointment with somebody, and the ego mind that says, okay, it's going to be this time and this date, and then, but they were playing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then eventually it just flowed and they were able to meet up. And then it was like, oh, that was divine timing. There was perfection in that. And
Yeah.
so to me, that's an example of that kind of synergy where, you know, we're not, we don't know necessarily what the bigger picture looks like, but everybody can really work together really well with it.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like, you know, it's also in business. It's like, you know, you and I doing similar kinds of work, but there's a difference in what we do. So we can share amongst each other. And so I can say, hey, you know, if somebody asks about a particular thing that's not mine, necessarily my specialty, I'd be like, no, go talk to Jason about it. Whereas the old competitive model that we're trying to move away from, I feel, I think a lot of people in society are moving away from this competitiveness where there's this dog eat dog kind of like, well, if
Yeah.
you're getting clients, and it's like, Jason, you come from a particular life experiences and particular intelligence and particular journey, and spirit knows this about you. And so it's like, wow, you're going to get the kind of people towards you that is almost like spirit's going to be able to use that wealth of knowledge you have. Just like,
Yeah.
you know, my wife, she's a medium too, and she works a lot with people who are, or she worked in a lot in drug rehabilitation a number of years ago. And so a lot of people that come through her were people who had overdoses and things like that, because she has an understanding of them, she has a knowledge of them, and can connect that with people. And I see that over and over again. And it's like, to me, that's the example of spirit team. You know, it's the synergy of the spirits in the other realm working with us too. And it's like the ego mind can't comprehend it. But when we can surrender to that, it's like in the world of business, it's like we could be supporting each other's networks and communities instead of what I often see, unfortunately, is this fighting over, or this like very territorial. No, this is my area. I work in this area. It's like, no, we can all work in this area. We've each got gifts and talents that, if we own it, are unique in their own respect. I'm sure you agree with that too. And it's just interesting to see how we're in that transition right now in
Absolutely.
society.
Absolutely. It's like that, you know, in whether you're a medium or you're spiritual or whatever, it all seems to be like in competition or trying to be better or becoming like, you know, becoming the one that, you know, it's like when you think about that gene key you're talking about, it's the one that rules the many, right? And it's like, instead of like looking at it in a different way, when it's like, actually it's the collective that's actually that. And when we look at the collective and we just think about this world, we think about this world as like, you know, chaos, right? So we're looking at chaos, everything's all the wrong way around. You're like, you thought you had planned something in, and then suddenly they turn up and it's not planned. And you think, well, why me? And then you look at, you think you got something else planned out, and then it suddenly becomes a totally different plan to what you've had planned. And it's like somehow it's like releasing to the fact that that's the divine plan. And the divine plan is the acceptance of the fact that it's supposed to be that way. This might look like a roadblock right now, but it may be leading you down the road to a better plan. And because we only see in the plan of life, we only see these little roadblocks and we only see these little problems, Matthew, then it's like, you know, we miss to see like the mystery of how it is all intervened divinely in life, right? So you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, for sure. And just you can look at nature to see how it works that way so harmoniously. And nature again doesn't have the intellect that attempts to intervene with things, right? And it's like, if I feel like we can learn so much from nature because we're part of nature, and I feel like that is part of it. It's like, it's funny actually, because I was just reading an article from Scientific American, which is a magazine I used to read tons of when I was a kid, but as I explored more quantum physics and spirituality, it felt like it was kind of stuck in its own way of thinking. But it seems like something's unfolding, because there was this article yesterday that I read, and it was talking about this very thing. And it's almost like that when people come together towards a common cause, it's like, what did he call it? Yeah, he called it self-organizing, right? It called it self-organizing. So, and as long as people's minds stay out of the way, then things will go according to the greater plan. I think of it in terms of, it's like a field around it. So like the Gene Keys is a great example. It's a group that's come together, and they've really made a conscious effort to live from this role, from this place of synergy. Within the Gene Keys work, it's called a heterarchy, right? We're very often used to the hierarchy, where it's like you were saying, the one person rules them all kind of thing. Whereas this heterarchy is this group of individuals who are coming together, and there, like I said, there may be that leadership role, but everybody is kind of yielding to what their part in it is. And there's just this kind of knowingness, and things seem to naturally come together. But as soon as one person tries to take control of it, it can kind of diminish. But it's like the Gene Keys has this morphogenetic field, right? And these morphogenetic fields are these things that we're tied into, and we feel like, we are finding our individual role in it, right? And so it's looking at what my role, again, it's that ant colony or the termite colony, where if I look down on them, it's like, they're just randomly running all over there. But then at the end of the day, you've seen they've come together and they've created something. And it's like, oh, wow, it's that dropping that need for it to go a certain way, and dropping that plan for it, and tuning into the field, like literally tuning into the field of what's happening. I just spent time this weekend, a friend of mine and a group of his were launching a business, and we sat down and did their Gene Keys, and the whole foundation of their business, according to the Gene Keys, is about synergy. Right? It just happens the way that the dates that they began and the group that's come together, it's a very important aspect of it. And there's certain people within that who might want to take a more kind of traditional role, but I can see that it's a team that's really going to work well by having synergy within the team, but then also synergy outside of the team too. And it's like connecting with others. And it's the kind of synergy, like, when you come over here and visit us and we're setting up these events and things, there's this, each of us is playing a different role, and it just seems to come together nicely. There might have been a learning experience in the beginning, but we're on round 3 now. So it's like, it starts to come together, and we just surrender into those different roles that we play, and the synergy just builds, I find. And each of us along the way has to have to drop our own like ego intentions in order for it to actually work, because it's like there's this morphic
Exactly.
field. There's this morphic field. It's like, here's mediumship morphic field, and it's coming to Vancouver Island now.
Yeah.
Let's tune into that.
Yeah.
So it's really neat. I find that when we surrender to that, it's so much more interesting, and it's so much more graceful.
It certainly is. And it's like you said, like everyone has their own place in a plan, in an organization, in an organizing an event in life, right? And it's just, you know, holding each other in their highest potential, and being thankful for whatever part they do within it. And
Mm-hmm.
if we can do that in, like we do with the events that we do on Vancouver Island, or if we can do that with any events done anywhere else, or anything that we can do cooperative with people and hold each other in their gifts, then that's something that's going to help the evolution of that event, of that thing going on right there. And that if we can expand that to the world, I believe that, you know, collectively we can make a difference if we all work together and do our part in it, right? Because if we don't work together and we work from fear, which is what we've been taught to do, you know, you listen to the one leader and you work from fear, and you're like, okay, I'm fear of losing my job, or the fear of not being able to do, then you're disconnected from the collective thing. And when you were going back to nature with the ants, where they are connected through a collective consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and the human race have that same ability to connect to that collective consciousness and work together. Elaine, only the thing is, what I find, and it doesn't matter if you're doing mediumship, spirituality, you're working on, you know, whatever, where you're working, people are working as individuals and not working as a whole. And it's all about that ego side that's saying, well, what about me, and what am I going to get out of it, instead of thinking, well, what about us, right?
Yeah.
What about us? Where is this going? And when we look at this mixture of chaos in the world, which I was talking about today, sometimes the chaos in the world, I said, but look at that chaos. You see it as chaos, but what if that is a mastery of the master's hand that you do not understand? And you will not see the magic in it if you do not look for the magic. If you're looking for chaos, you will only see chaos. But if you look for the magic that comes out of that, like you said with your point, Matthew, things got changed. You thought you had an appointment, suddenly it got moved. You thought you had things sorted out, suddenly it changed. What if the bigger plan was to have that change, so it would be far better for you, but also far better for a greater whole? And that's where we look at other things. I mean, I thought I was finished with my work here, and suddenly the fence has blown down, so it needs to be fixed. And Ursula reacted like, "Oh my God, that as well." And I was like, "But it's okay." I said, "Just it's okay. I still feel that this is a part of a plan." So all I did is mention it to my neighbor, and he's already fixed it, and he's going to bring something to make it even more sturdier. And I said, "Well, you sure you don't want any help with that?" "No, it's as good as done." And it just shows you, when you believe that it's all going to be all right, even though it seems to be so complex and so uncomfortable at times. And we're talking about life, and we're talking about things that go on. Then we know there's a reason why it needs to be primed properly before it comes into development of coming out into the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, because behind it's all, there's like this deep fear, especially in the collective too, that we're heading down the wrong path, we're going the wrong way. But and so a big part of it is learning to trust in nature, trust in ourselves, trust in our higher selves, and trust in
Yeah.
nature. And I
Yeah.
think you were hinting at it too, is like this, we're individual. We see ourselves, if we see ourselves as individual beings, then it's like, it's all about survival, right? And it's about making sure I've got what I need, even if it means the family next door doesn't have what they need. But then when we start to recognize that we are part of a unified field, that we are all connected, that at the level of consciousness we are one humanity, then suddenly it becomes this state of interbeing, right? It's like we're all connected to each other. And as we do that, this is, I see it more and more as I move away from the old model of living and into this, is like there's just these synchronicities that unfold. I love synchronicities. Those are, I've talked about them before, but they, again, they're all on, they're all connected, and how things work together. I got a great example of it yesterday. I broke my little toe yesterday. It's kind of purple today. It looks like a little plum today.
Oh
And
boy.
it's my little toe. It's just this little toe on this foot that's 6'4" frame. But do you know how much it's affected other things? Because of the synergy with every cell of the body. It's like everything's communicating together. Like there's this organism, there's parts of me that are saying, hey, there's pain down there. There's parts of my other parts of my body are adjusting to accommodate that. And it's like, it was the little toe, right?
Yeah.
Like we could break a leg and there's that, oh man, there's a major impact. But here I feel, it's kind of, it's like, it was painful at the time, and it's a little painful to walk on still. It's a little red today, but just, it was such a beautiful lesson for that synergy of that, right? The synergy of the human body. And then 3 times during the day, people mentioned randomly. I just happened to start listening to an audiobook by Joe Dispenza. It's a book of his I've read, but I wanted to listen to the audiobook. And then twice during the day, other people brought up Joe Dispenza and his physical healing. And I'm like, well, I got the perfect test for this. I've got this toe that's just in, maybe I'm going to, maybe I can try out this. And it's like, I get, like you said, it's like, I don't know what that's for. I could go into, oh, I'm an idiot. I crushed my foot. How did I do that? I should have been more awake or whatever.
Yeah.
Or I could look at it as just like, okay, what is this for? And see it as a bigger picture of something that I don't even realize. And that hopefully in the long term, it'll actually benefit my whole physicality and my mentality from
Yeah.
that experience, So it's like seeing everything as one, as interconnected, and this is where quantum physics takes us,
Hmm.
right? Are you familiar with heart math and the Global Coherence Project?
I am with the heart math, so I know that the half math has to do with the same resonance as the Earth.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I'm
there's
about
that
that far. That's as
connection.
far as I am.
The Global Coherence Project is something they've been working on for a few years, and they've actually, it's like measuring the effects that large numbers of people being in coherence, like you're just talking about, being in tune with nature, right? When we're incoherent, we feel stressed, we feel anxious, we feel angry, we feel upset. When we are coherent, we feel relaxed, we feel peaceful. In fact, there's just been a major solar flare or solar storm that's hit the Earth, and a lot of people, especially sensitives, are feeling just exhausted, right? And so in those times during solar flares, we can actually become incoherent. It takes more conscious effort to become coherent within ourselves. But it's like, it shows that you being coherent within yourself, centered and peaceful, and me being coherent and peaceful, thousands of miles apart from each other, actually have a connected effect on the rest of the planet. And
Mm.
it's really cool to me that, this is stuff that you and I can feel and know inside of ourselves. We don't need the science for it, but a lot of the population still loves having to have that confirmation, because it consolidates any doubt they might have. And
Mm.
so it's like we can feel that effect. And now science is demonstrating this. And so more and more people are recognizing that the coherence that they hold in their own field, the peace that they hold in their own field, is affecting other people throughout the day. We don't have to
Yeah.
say anything. We don't have to give advice. We don't have to, open our mouths about anything. It's just like, just that presence alone has this effect on the greater whole. And that doesn't mean we ignore all the negative stuff that comes up and the emotional challenges and the trauma. it's through healing those that we find greater coherence.
Yeah.
So that to me is like, that symbolizes that synergy of things too, that are that just play out, and in the bigger picture. And I'm also being shown something just in my mind that I hear too. It's like a person that contacted me for Gene Key's work, right? There's hundreds of people who offer Gene Key's work online. She's based on the other side of Canada. Somehow she chose to work with me, right? She felt called to work with me. She'd seen my website, and then through our building our relationship, we found out so many commonalities, right? And things that she didn't know before, but she just trusted that intuition, and it guided her. And I feel that in all of this, in the synergy that we create, so much of it has to come from really trusting our intuition, and where our intuition guides us versus where the mind thinks it should be going. Because I feel like it should take us out of synergy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, I think the human race is the only animal that would say, "Well, why shouldn't I swim upstream? I mean, why shouldn't I go the wrong way? You know, why shouldn't I try and go the way with the most resistance? You know, instead of like going where the flow is of least resistance in our lives." So we'll say like, "Well, you know, I'm gonna challenge it. I'm gonna go that way. I'm gonna go the other way. That's difficult." And instead of like following the intuition way, we'd be saying, hold on, if I follow the flow of where things are bringing me to, then I'm going to get to my destination anyway. And that's opening up to the acceptance again that there's a greater plan. There's something that's of greatness here that's working together collectively, bringing around these synchronicities that are basically just waking you up to these possibilities of like, hey, there's synchronicities going on in your life. If you look at them and you look for them, then you know you're in flow. You know things are coming together. You know things are being moved together. There's certain things that you mentioned about the heart math, which is radiating out a heartfelt frequency which is coherent, that can bring about change. And they did a study with meditative monks that they had in New York City, where there was a lot of fighting and graffiti going on, stuff like that. And when they meditated in that place, it all calmed down and changed, and it all became mellow. The whole neighborhood had changed through meditation. So this coherency that you're talking about with the heart math would bring about a positive change as well. And it's really nice to know, because even science and quantum physics have said that if there is one part of a gene on this side of the world and one part of a gene on this side of the world, and if this one changes, that one will change as well, right? And that's the coherency. That's that's how powerful it can be. And you think about it, it's like we, on some level, every single one of us are connected, like spiritually, you know, whatever. And if we were like you know, like we were talking about, if we could get people to live in their gifts, like live in their intuitive side, bring that intuitive side out and believe in that, and like everyone said, okay, acceptance, right? Like, you know, instead of saying, oh, Matthew, you've hit your toe, how silly was that? But acceptance of the fact, well, Matthew, that's pretty bad for you, what can I do to help, right? And it's like, you know, and when you look at it as being something that's creating change within your life, it could be a blessing in disguise. But if we see it as a problem, then it will only ever be a problem. And when you look like, what is the gift that it's given me? What has it brought into my life? But many times in this world, we look at things, events in the world and things that happen in the world, and we look at them and like, we see the chaos, we see the problems, we see these things. And in our own lives especially, and we'll probably be going like, why me? I know I've done it in the past, but it's like, you know, then it's like, then when you open to the fact, hold on, what's happening here? What is coming into fruition? What is coming into effect? What is being given? Like, you know, we tend to spend too much time concentrating on the negative stuff that's going on in life, and not enough time in the celebration of what's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in that intuitive side that you were talking about, Matthew, then it's like you are following that flow. You are following that flow to where it's taking you.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it, isn't it? It's ease and flow. And in our world, so often it's guided by struggle and sacrifice, right? And
Yeah,
so for those of us that are choosing to harmonize with the greater field of life, is like, as we harmonize, it's like life does become easier. Life does become more flowing, right? And, I was with a group of people yesterday, and I was talking to people individually, and I could feel myself starting to feel guilty in a way that my life was so much easier than theirs and so much more flowing. And I was like, just becoming aware of that and allowing, because it's like, if I've got grace and flow and ease in my life, largely speaking, that doesn't mean there's not challenges and obstacles. Those challenges and obstacles are like rocks in the, you're going downstream, there's the rock. Well, you find a way, around it. And we can look at those as challenges that are really helpful, right? It's an opportunity rather than an obstruction. And so it was as I was walking around with people, it's just for anchoring in that grace and ease, because it's like, I want that for other people too. I feel like if we can all begin to trust in that and harmonize with that could happen more and more. And it hasn't been an easy journey in my life for me to reach that awareness. It's like the struggle and the sacrifice were built into my conditioning. And so it's like I still have to be mindful of them when they creep in. But it's like the moment I connect into the greater field of things, it's like, wow, then suddenly stress drops, right? People are feeling stressful in life because they're trying to force things to happen in their way, in their time, right? But if we can just trust and connect into the deeper field of life, it's like then we can begin to recognize the time for something. But we get so, it's like it has to be now, it has to be this time, and we can get stressed and we can feel it building up. So yeah, it's like when we get caught up in those moments and just become aware of our bodies, I feel like we can just feel that tension and then just connect, okay, what am I trying to push through here? What am I trying to force? It doesn't mean that even if things are working along, that stress can come into it, but the stress is usually because we've got this concept of time, right? And it's like, really, at the level of spirit, there is no time anyway, but there's an intelligence in there that works with us in the world where there is linear time. So it's, and yeah, so I feel like that's a big part of it, is allowing grace and ease. So it's like, what if that was a challenge for each of us today? It's funny that we even have to talk about it being a challenge, but it's like, how can we allow more grace and ease into our life? And I think it's like you said, it's like not judging the things that happen as wrong or bad or what have you, but instead taking an overarching view and perspective of it and seeing where it fits into the bigger picture. And because as we release those judgments, I think we can start to see where it does fit into the bigger picture. And yeah, I feel that's when the synergy really begins to flow out into the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's looking at it like this, when I get back to that point of, looking at the chaos, looking at the things, looking at the problems in the world, looking at the stuff, how much does that affect us? Instead of the other way round, when we say, look, hold on, we've got a soul's light inside of us, this spirituality, this intuitive self, this self that is connected to everything in the world. That connection is through the intuition. Instead of being affected by the world around us in a positive or a negative way, and not being connected to our own soul's resonance, and bringing that out into the world, because there's so many people in this world that have, like, within inside themselves, like a wonderful essence of wisdom that this world needs to hear. but yet they look out in the world of in judgment of chaos and problems and stuff like that, instead of like looking out in the world and thinking, okay, let me just bring this into the world. For
Mm-hmm.
if we were all coherent in that way and we were all radiating that out into this world, we would be creating change vibrationally anyway. And that's the thing. It's like a lot of us in this world are being affected by the things around us, workplaces, people, colleagues, situations, problems, the world, the news, and all that sort of thing, when really that does not define us. What defines us is our beingness. What defines us is that being within. And if there's a lot going on outside of you and it's like noisy, it doesn't matter how noisy or chaotic it is, but when you feel within, there's always stillness. And when you feel within, there is always pure wisdom, pure light, love, sincerity. And that's without connecting to the ego mind. It's just connecting to the soul's possibilities. So that soul's possibilities, the more energy we can put into that, the more that we can work from that aspect of ourselves spiritually and bring out into the world, bring out into it whatever lives that we're living in. It will create a positive change. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that what you were talking about heart math is similar, because you're raising the frequency and you notice they've measured the frequency around these people, that it goes up to a certain frequency. It's like, wow, that's possible. But it's also possible when you connect to your soul to raise your frequency in that way as well, and it has a positive effect. And that's the thing. It's like these quantum physics scientists, they're coming up, they're catching up with what we already intuitively know. And
Yeah.
that's a good thing for this world, because it makes it more concrete for people to see and to feel.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And they use their scientific words and they avoid things like the soul in conversations because most scientists haven't accepted that. You know, I was just reading something the other day and it was talking about how scientists that they've ruled out the possibility that there is a soul based on their scientific studies. And it's like, well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because,
Yeah.
you know, there's this knowingness that so many of us, and I'm sure everybody who's on here today would be of that mind. And, you know, when it comes to that synergy and connection to spirit too, like I feel this carries over into the realm of spirit too.
Mm.
And I feel like that spirit is so often helping and working with us in that kind of synergy when we allow it, right? So it's like even when we feel like we're so deeply alone, there's an underlying synergy that is unfolding if we allow ourselves to know it, right? It's like your team is with you there all the time when you're able to connect into it. And I think of the synergy of it too. Like I feel like the more in tune we get with this and the more connected, the less we have to do some of the worldly things like marketing, right? If you're running a mediumship business, it's so funny the number of times my wife has heard that, you know, this person had to contact them, not because they, you know, saw anything she was marketing or anything, but because they had a dream about her, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
or and the other thing too is when it seems like the spirits on the other side have 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 helped align things so that certain people come into their world. I was doing I'm I was working with a group about some drone work, and I always talk about drone work as my cover story because there's actually something else playing out there. And I was doing mediumship with somebody last week, and I brought through this gentleman, and this gentleman had died in a kind of a violent way, and it was very quick, and was able to share lots of evidence. And but it wasn't for that person there that was actually I was giving the reading to. That's not the person who was closest to it. It was two other people, and those two other people happened to be involved in this drone job that I was going to be spending time with them on. So it was like, and then when I said, oh, it was almost like John, this guy came through so that when I connect with Timo and this other guy, that it's like, oh, wow, right? It's like there's that connection there. But on the surface, I'm doing drone work, but underneath it all, there's some other coordination going on where it's almost like this spirit wanted to align me with these two people in this particular way. And however that plays out, like when I've shared that with myself, with others too, it's like there's this sense of knowing in that, right? And so it's like, how often does that happen where, you know, the spirit guides or the spirits of a loved one who's passed over, you know, they're like, oh wow, I need to connect you with this particular, you know, they're not, here's the person they want to communicate with, here's the spirit can't communicate directly. So it's like, okay, let's see which medium's lit up right now and that we can coordinate these synchronicities and things like that. Because I really feel like that plays a role in it, because it's all consciousness, right? It's all connected and it's on multiple dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking largely about this third three-dimensional moving into five-dimensional reality, but there's like so many other dimensions that come to play with this, and that you know, our loved ones on the other side are a perfect example of that. And you know, I felt so often that with they line up with certain mediums because that medium is best going to be able to express them, and that they'll be able to connect people up in ways that they hadn't thought of. And just listening into listening into ourselves in that moment. It's like when we feel like, oh, somebody would be, this particular person is somebody I feel drawn to working with, and trusting in that, because you know, I feel like it can come through in so many different ways. So it's just that synergy with the spirit world, right? As much as physicality, synergy with the spirit world as well.
Absolutely. That reminds me of what a mentor of mine said to me and said to the group when we were working with the spirit world. He said, she said, if you're working with the spirit world, you've got to treat them like people, right? They're not just information. They're not just, you know, an energy. They're people, and respect them like you would respect another human being. And I thought that was really a beautiful way of putting it. But also, loads of people, mediums and spiritual people, it's all about the marketing here, but they're not quite thinking about what the spirit world does for the marketing of your soul in the spirit world. And it has to do with your resonance, the pure resonance of who you are and why you're doing this.
Yes.
You know, and mediums that are of service, or people that are in spirituality who are of service, the spirit world can see that, can feel it, and can find them by their light. One of the questions I asked in the seance was, how do you find us in the dark? And they said, we can find you by your light and the color of your soul. And it just lets you know how, because I asked, how did the spirit world see us? And the same answer came, we see you by the color of your light, by the color of your soul. So how you are within is how they see you, and they will market you. So if you help someone in the way, like you're helping them in a beautiful way, and you bring through a loved one that died tragically, and that they will go away and they will tell the spirit world, oh, he did a good job for me. And that's how these things become synchronicity. A lot of clients come to me as well, and they say, well, I heard via, and someone, I heard your name so many times, I just had to come and see you. Or I don't know, it just kept coming up and I just had to come and see you, or I just felt I had to move, and you were the one that resonated with me. And it just shows you that the spirit world not only choose their medium or choose the person that you need to go and see, but they help move you intuitively via your emotions to go to the right person. And that
physically move.
that blows like, you know, physical marketing out the window, because you know, of course these days you got to think, you know, clearly, and you got to have a website these days and all that sort of thing. But people are drawn to you for your light, and even people that see you physically, they're drawn to you because of your beingness and your essence. They're not drawn to you for the words that you put on paper. They're not drawn to you for the amount of marketing you do. They're not drawn to you for your glossy photos, even though everyone has to have them and you need to look respectable. At the end of the day, they're drawn to you because of your light. And
Yeah.
that's how people are drawn to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like the spirit will literally, it can literally move us. Like we might end up moving right to somewhere else. I remember I used to judge myself in the beginning when I first moved to Victoria, because it was almost like I was living in a new house every year. But every time I was in a new place, there was some reason for that. And so I just had to learn to trust that. And now I've been in this place. We've been in this part of Vancouver Island for a good number of years now. And it's just like, but every time that we get moved around, there's a higher thing for it. And when you're talking about the marketing thing, it's like, it's like, because I used to work in marketing and I didn't like a lot of the approaches that they would talk about, right? And now I just tell people, find ways to have fun with it, because you know what, like you said, if you're stepping into the light of who you are, then things are going to naturally begin to unfold anyway in that way. And what we just need to do is give the ego some way to play, right? Let the ego play. Let it go and have that playfulness over there, and enjoy itself over there, and let it think that it's running the show, but it's not really. It's like, and we have to remind ourselves of that. But it's like, I remember one time I wrote an email, and I was in my days of personal training. This is like over 12 years ago now, and I wanted to move house, but I was writing this email to all my personal training clients, and it was about personal training stuff. And I think it had a lot to do, I can't remember what it had to do with now, but what I do remember is I was sitting there contemplating, okay, what's the subject heading for this email, right? Because they always use, okay, come up with these fancy names and create the momentum and pressure and scarcity and all that kind of stuff. And I just sat there and I just trusted. And I heard, okay, Brothers in Arms. And so I called it Brothers in Arms. And I sent off this email to over 500 people. And the next day I was walking through Victoria, and a guy I knew came up to me, and he said, we got talking, and then I mentioned I was looking for a new home. But he said the reason he'd stopped was because he just received my email the day before, and it was called Brothers in Arms. And he said, that's the name of the book me and my friends have just released. It's called Brothers in Arms. And so we were talking for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then it came out that I was looking for a place to live. So guess where I ended up living? It was like,
Yeah.
I remember sitting there and that title coming to me, and I put it in there. And suddenly it's opened me up to a space. I didn't have to go to Craigslist. I didn't have to go looking around the city. It's a city where there's a very low rental rate, but I was still always able to find a place. And to me, that's another example of that. It's like giving, just use our mind to play, because Spirit's got this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even this call, I love it how we do this too. It's like, we don't do, okay, we're going to talk about this and we're going to talk about that. And there's the synergy in it. And for me, it's like, you'll be talking about certain things, and then suddenly I'll get a chill, and I'll know that, there's something here to talk about. And then, or I'll get an image or something like that. But there's just a synergy that works there. And we don't cut each other off. We're not, hugging the conversations, we're sharing it back and forth. And to me, that's the kind of synergy that I feel like we can enjoy, so much. When I was in public speaking a lot more than I am now, and I had a business partner, he and I learned to synergize. Initially, there was a little bit of power struggle there, I think, but we learned to synergize and work together. And what we created was so much more amazing when we did that, versus than when one of us needed to be the center of attention more than the other. So, I feel that's huge in that, and just trusting in that synergy. It's like, you're going to say exactly, oftentimes what comes out of your mouth is what I need to hear when we're having these conversations, right? So it's like, to me, that's the synergy and that kind of stuff. So it's just way more fun
Yeah.
when we just when we trust and allow that way versus trying to control the end result.
Absolutely, and I feel the same way, Matthew, because that's what it's about, you know. And if you know if you can look at the synergy and think, yes, that's the way it works, and it's like, you know, holding each other in their gifts, and you know, even the things that you bring up are the things that are so much in that synchronicity that I need to hear as well. And since I was on this call, not only did I hear that, you know, what, that the fence was going to be fixed through my neighbor, so I thought, oh, that's good news. Then someone came on the door at the moment I'm in this call, so I had to put myself on mute and turn my video off, go downstairs, speak to him. He said, I can't do your driveway today. I probably won't have time to do it in 2 weeks. And after that, I'm going on a 3-week holiday. So then I'm like, I've got to believe in this synchronicity of like, okay, there's another plan here that's going to be bigger than this. But then it's coming back up here, listening to you, and then getting back into the flow of this call, and just knowing that this is all part of the master's plan. This is all part of the plan of how it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, if we were to worry about every little thing that got wrong, we wouldn't be coherent, we wouldn't be in connection, we wouldn't be holding each other in each other's gifts. And I think that's the most important thing. And also the respect for every human being for who they are, because there's one thing we do as human beings, we tend to judge people. And like, you'll see someone walking around with purple hair and a nose pin or whatever and tattoos up their arm, it might be a lady, and you'll be going, and some people won't even look at them, right? And there is something that it's like, some people feel really invisible in this lifetime, and it's like, yeah, look at them. Like, even homeless people, look at them. They don't need to be invisible, they can be visible, you know. And I think that's also like stepping outside of yourself, out of the judgment, and stepping out into, hey, visible, okay, yeah, see them, hold them in their true potential, you know. And I think it's wonderful how we hold each other in that potential, and keep up these conversations, Matthew. So it's really good. Thank you.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, actually, when you started sharing, your volume stopped for me. I don't know if it stopped. So it stopped for about a minute, I think. I caught everything else after that minute, but so it was like, oh, I guess I wasn't supposed to hear what was in that minute there. So
Oh boy.
even that, like, I've been on calls where I had a call the other week with somebody, and during it, I was just like, I really wanted to ask them about a past life experience. And so I asked them the question about it, and I was waiting on their answer. And as soon as they started talking and sharing about this profound past life experience, everything went mute for me. And we couldn't get this call back on and working again. So I never did find out what that was. But I was like, I guess I'm not supposed to hear that yet, or something, right? Or maybe she's not ready to share it yet, or something like that. But who knows? So yeah, it's really good, the synergy, and just even when things don't seem to be going the way we want. Now, I am aware, time-wise, we are at the hour here. That went by quickly.
Yeah, we're at the time. It's that time already.
Yeah. And we will be back next week at 8 a.m. for another conversation like this. And we'll make sure that we have our technical stuff working on properly next time, or as best as possible. And we'll also make sure we give an introduction to it ahead of time, so everybody knows what to expect.